Hey everyone, welcome to our show Synergy. So just a brief announcement before we get started. Please hit like and subscribe. When the show eventually has enough followers to become monetized, all the proceeds will go to help those who need recovery and mental health services. So it's a good cause. So thank you very much. And without further ado, let's get to the big show. Thank you. Welcome everyone to Synergy, and once again we have an exciting guest coming out of Indiana, and it's Atlantis Waits. And I guess I didn't put this question on your questionnaire, but how did you get such a fantastic name?
It's funny because back in 2004, I had gotten divorced. And so I needed a new email address that I could keep for essentially the rest of my life. That because before that I had like, my first name, my middle initial, and then my married last name. And so I was like, well, I need to do something else. And so I sat there. I remember exactly when it happened. I sat there and I was just like, what's a good name? You kind of went into one of those kind of meditative type things.
Hmm.
And then what came into my head was Atlantis Waits. And I'm like, ooh, that sounds good. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. So that's the name I've had for that long.
So almost like a download, like a semi-download of
Yeah, kind of like that.
I'll get,
Yeah.
I'll
And
get, I'll get those from time to time, just something that intuitively I know is correct, but I don't know how I know it's correct. And then I'll look up the science, or I'll read a book, doing research for my books, and there it'll be. It'll
yeah.
be, and they tested it and documented it, and I was like, oh wow, that was right.
You're
Who
like,
knew?
there it is.
Who knew?
Yay.
Actually, one of those is a very, very funny story. uh, I told my wife is starting to go through menopause,
Hmm.
and I told Ed came to me. I was like, well, more sex would help with that. Of
Well,
course
it
she
might.
thought, yeah, of course she thought, well, yeah, you just want more sex, so that's your motivation behind it. And then sure enough, if you look it up, you go Google it,
True.
regular sex will help transition a woman into menopause easier.
It's true.
Now
Yeah,
we're
the
gonna.
constant oxytocin.
Yeah, you're gonna, I mean,
Hmm.
so I don't know, it made sense to me, but of course, she's like, yeah, you have ulterior motives here.
Always, always. No
Always,
different
always.
than my husband, of
You,
course.
well, there's nothing wrong with a win-win situation.
Never, never
Never,
wrong.
never. Okay, I guess so. Let's look into the first question. Now, do you follow any particular dogma or any is there any particular dogmas or wisdom books or so on and so forth that you derive your philosophy and so forth from?
Mostly what I've followed for most of my life has been a version of Buddhism. A version of Buddhism. What I would describe myself as probably as late as last year was a Gnostic Buddhist witch kind of person. A very much a mix. And it's the thing is that I don't actively practice anything. But I naturally tend to go along the lines of like Buddhism, the Kaiju Tibetan Buddhism, particularly. And so, because I have looked into so many religions ever since I was young, I've looked into all kinds of religions and like studied Thelema, studied like Judaism, Islam, and I've looked into all of these things. And I'm like, okay, what is it about it that I like? What don't I like? And basically, what I had found and through the whole thing was that every single religion has a piece of the truth. They have their own, I'm going to call it trademark image of what they see as the truth, which is the truth. But then it's surrounded with a bunch of other, I'm going to call it junk. I don't mean to offend anybody when I say
Mhm.
that, but surrounded with a bunch of other junk, worshiping people, worshiping, other, I'm going to say false idols. Um, and I don't follow that. I don't like the ranking systems. I don't like that at all. And so they're like, you should bow at his feet. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And it's not a pride thing. I believe that every single person on this planet is equal. We all are, I don't want to say the same, but as far as like, like for example, one of the things that the Baptists absolutely hated about me. Now I went to their church quite a bit when I was younger with
Baptists hate
friends.
me too.
Yeah, they can't stand me. And so when I went there and I was asked, and I was probably 13 at the time, and I've been questioning all kinds of things since I was like 5. So they asked me, they're like, well, wouldn't you bow at Jesus's feet? And I'm like, no, why would I do that? And they're like, well, you should. He's your savior. He's, this and this and this. And I'm like, I appreciate what he did. I appreciate and I understand that he's real. I understand that. But I don't feel like he's above me. I don't feel like he's above me and I don't feel like he's below me. We're equal. We are respected as equals. And a lot of people don't like that. They don't like that idea.
Well,
I don't know why, but
I
that's
think
just
I
how I've
think
always
one of the
been.
things that I did appreciate was especially about Christ was that he, the portion where he got down and he washed his disciples' feet and he said, I came here to serve,
Mhm.
so that and basic humility was is it's a key portion to keeping me right sized.
Mhm.
I can't get into an eschatological debate of who's right and who wrong. You mentioned that there is a theme running through all the religions, and I just had a big conflict recently because I read the whole Bible in 24 days
Mhm.
as an overview to just read the whole thing like I would read a book rather than cherry pick the good portions out of it because
Mhm.
there's a lot of gems in there. There's a lot of gems
Mhm.
in the Psalms and the Proverbs, the story of David and Christ and so on. But reading it as an overview, I was very, very conflicted because this is definitely gonna make me a blasphemer, and it's definitely gonna make me a heretic, and they probably would have burned me at the stake for this. But it seemed like God caused a lot more trouble than Lucifer,
Right. You're absolutely right.
especially
Mhm.
in the Old Testament and looking at the capriciousness and the childishness of this deity, leads one to think, "Wow, that's pretty evil." And I saw your meme the other day about the flood, and it's on the mark. It really is because they didn't have any rules up till that point,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I don't like let's just drown you all. Uh,
Yeah.
but and that bummed me out for a solid 2 weeks. I was conflicted. I didn't go into a depression or anything like that, but it did bum me out for a solid 2 weeks. And then I started reading a book on Gnosticism by John Lamb
Mhm.
Lash, and that went way out there and wild too.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then and
Mhm.
now I'm reading Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley, which is
Mm.
basically the underlying theme to all the religions and connection with deity and so forth. And what
Yeah.
came to me was even a direct spiritual message through us while we're incarnation, while we're in physical form, while we're in flesh, is going to have distortions.
Mhm. Mhm.
So no matter how it comes down, because I've noticed, and maybe you have too, that as I've gone on the spiritual path, I've changed at different levels. I've gone through conflicts, I've had epiphanies, and then the conflicts were resolved, and then I became different, at the next level. It was like that stuff didn't bother me. I was healed from it, and so on and so forth. That's why, you can read a spiritual book, and when you're reading it at different times in your life, you get completely
Hmm.
different interpretations of that. And that helped me to reconcile what was given to those holy people at that time. Of course, I'm
Hmm.
not, I'm not a churchgoer. I'm probably I wouldn't be invited into many of those places. And it's sad because, I'm not trying to knock someone's faith or anything.
Oh
If
no.
I would like to
Mm-mm.
understand it better, so I ask
Hmm.
questions. Unfortunately, when I ask those questions and people can't answer them, their pride gets in the way and they get angry. And, through the centuries, through the millennia, the anger turns into violence against other people, you
I have
know.
experienced the same.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like, yeah, you're not welcome here anymore. Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Well, I'm a minister, but my ministry doesn't tell anyone what to believe, so it's more
Hmm.
non-denominational. I think that
I
if you
have to sneeze just one moment. I'm so
uh,
sorry.
rub right here.
Because my allergies are just killing me today. At least I thought I was going to sneeze. Okay, maybe not. All right. I, I
Yeah,
started.
it's this little
I'm like,
qigong.
let's just do this.
If you rub right there, yeah, there you go. If you rub right there, it's supposed to stifle a sneeze, that pressure point.
Oh,
Uh, now, growing up and so on and so forth, what led you to shape what you do now? Did you have a difficult childhood? You mentioned that you started searching, searching for God very early.
yeah. I was naturally very curious about it. I'm very curious about religion in general. My family, we just never went to church or anything like that. I'm going to call it a tame childhood. A pretty decent childhood. The only thing that it lacked was emotion, really. It lacked love and affection, but I was taken care of or whatever. Sure, you had your mental and emotional abuses like we all do as we're children, right? And I blatantly blow it off now because it's in the past, and I don't blame my parents or anything like that because they
Mm,
did the best they could. And it's not like I lived in the slums. I mean, we were poor, but I didn't live in the slums or anything like that. Or, it wasn't super hard when it came to that kind of thing. But I leaned a lot on Jesus. I did lean a lot on Jesus as I was growing up to comfort me because I didn't get it anywhere else. And so I used to visualize him sleeping beside me as I would go to sleep. Because I used to have a lot of sleep problems. Well, I still have a lot of sleep problems, but I used to have a lot of sleep problems even back then. And so I would visualize him, going to sleep and kind of using him as a pillow, leaning up against him. And it helped me a lot. Gave me whatever support that I needed at that time. But a lot of the stuff, like from when I was a child, it set me up with it set me up with a lot of, emotional stuntedness. That's what I'm going to call it. Emotional stuntedness. I wasn't experienced in how to deal and handle with good emotions. So even to this day, you can sit here and compliment me, and I'm not going to know what to do about it. I'm going to be, I'll be like, thank you, but I'm going to feel really weird on the inside because it's weird
mm,
to me. It's strange. And so my husband has been very essential in my learning what love is and how to love and that kind of thing, what affection is, like true, authentic, I don't want anything from you kind of affection, that kind of stuff, the
mm,
actual real thing. Because I spent a lot of my time from, teenage years all the way through my 20s doing what a lot of 20s, teenage and 20s, girls do, seeking validation through, you know, physical attractive, physical attraction and sex and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but I sought out a therapist when I was probably 2006, and I saw her for about 7 years, and she helped me so much in regards to learning who I was and what I should stand up for. Because I mean, and there was one thing that she had noted. She's like, you had such an interesting, childhood that was filled with, I'm going to say, a lot of emotional pain, a lot of emotional pain and stuff like that. And she's like, but yet you don't think it's abuse at all. She's like, I find that fascinating. And I'm like, well, doesn't everybody kind of go through this? And so that's where it's kind of confusing when it comes to what caused all this stuff. In fact, I would probably say that my escape into books when I was a kid probably created my urge to heal, created there was a little bit of urge for like holistic healing and stuff like that, but really not a ton at the time. Of course, this is, I'm 42, so back then we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all that stuff.
Hmm.
And so I just had my fantasy books that I was always reading. um and I remember when I was probably 10 to 12, somewhere in there, I read a book about a girl who could heal with her hands. And I remember looking at my hands and going, I can do that. And I ended up getting Reiki trained in 2007, and went for that and everything, which that was interesting, but I actually don't use it that much. I don't use it a lot. It's just kind of one of those things that I keep in my toolbox, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
It's really a lot of I'm going to say awakening towards real servitude towards others didn't occur until after I was 30, after my Saturn return. My Saturn return, everybody has their Saturn return about 30. So it was
Well,
after
I
that.
love astrology. I know nothing about it. I have an astrologer.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, she keeps me consulted on things that are going on, and I know enough that billionaires and the royalty used it after
Hmm.
science. So it's like, oh, if they're using it after the advent of the Enlightenment in science, maybe there's something there. So I will definitely keep it in the like you said, in the toolbox.
Yes, yes. And I'm really big into astrology. I've always liked astrology since I was a teenager, anyways. I got into the whole tarot and witchcraft and all this other stuff when I was in my teen years. And it kind of fell off in my 20s a little bit, but then I met somebody who actually was Reiki trained, and he was in very essential towards my spiritual start. I'm going to call it that, my spiritual start, because of course I had all this curiosity, but I had nowhere to direct it to. I didn't know what to do with it.
Hmm.
And he helped me. He was a friend of the person I was dating at the time. He helped me figure out what to do with it. And so he gave me a copy. What was it? He gave me a copy of the Celestine Prophecy and gave me a copy of A Course in Miracles.
Okay.
And so read through those things, and I started started into the new age books rather than reading, fiction and stuff. You could technically say those are fiction, but I started into the new age books, like Sylvia Browne was my favorite. I loved that woman, even though she was cranky, but I adored her. I thought she was great. um and so, but I would read Sylvia Browne, read a bunch of other books and everything, and got Reiki trained way too quickly, which sent me into a dark night of the soul kind of thing.
Mm.
And that was like right about my Saturn return too at the same time. Which your Saturn return is known to be a really difficult time. A lot of times people can talk about the 4 years, from 28 to 32. A lot of people suffer during those years. There's a lot of change and switching, a lot of like upheaval during that time. And boy, there was a lot during mine. So um, I got more into it at that point, became more aware of how things were, settled into an okay space for a long time when I married my husband. I didn't really do too much at that point. Kind of held back. We were trying to have kids and stuff like that. I was focused more on the holistic health at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because in 2009, 2009, yeah, 2009, I was looking into the HCG diet. Do you remember that?
No.
So the HCG diet is using human chorionic gonadotropin, which is the pregnancy hormone. You use that and then you fast at the same time, 500 calories a day. So you do that stuff and you inject this HCG. Now, what HCG does, and it does for pregnant women as well, is it releases all of your nutrients from everywhere so that it can flow readily through the body, for the fetus to, be properly fed. Um, but when you're doing this during a diet, what you're doing is you're releasing all that fat into your system so it can be eaten and you can drop the weight quickly, which it did work. But I didn't actually agree to do it until I did the research on it. Because I was just like, this seems kind of extreme. So I dug for probably a month. I dug and I read fasting books and I read all this other stuff and everything. Fasting, I'm like, I know everything about fasting now, it seems like. Um, Read a whole bunch on fasting books, anatomy and how things are affected, and HCG and pregnancy and what it is, and this, why. Got into the diet, lost a bunch of weight, and then I got sick after that. I got sick. And so what happened was is that I had undiagnosed celiac disease,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically an issue with gluten, wheat gluten. So I had undiagnosed, and it was something that I've had basically my whole life, but my body, with the fasting, it caused a full reset of everything, and it caused it to come out to the forefront that I had a problem
Mm-hmm.
with wheat. And so because of the celiac, I started digging around. I'm like, I got to fix this because I'm miserable. And so I was miserable. They're like, it's autoimmune. You're not going to do anything. No, I met a doctor. I met a doctor while through all my journeys that basically said, "Oh, you still believe that celiac disease is a an autoimmune disease and not the virus that it is?" And I was just like, "What?" So going along those lines, I've learned a lot about viruses. I've learned a lot about all how viruses affect the body, how big viruses like Epstein-Barr. Epstein-Barr is the base virus that's responsible for like type 1 diabetes, celiac disease, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia. And this Epstein-Barr virus, 95% of us have had it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to find, as far as like, you have to know where to look for it for the reactivation. But anyways, that's how I got into holistic healing and learning things. Oh, what a cute kitty.
Yeah, Leo wants to be part of the show today.
Hi, kitty, kitty.
He is the Baron Leopold von Caddington the Mighty, and he is pretty mighty. So his
Adorable.
moniker, his moniker is fitting. Well, yeah, I want to touch on, the fact that, the emotional dysregulation that was going on during your formative years and so on and so forth. Most of us do the same thing. No big deal. And, the study I've done of that is that we have the big thinker in the front, the prefrontal cortex, and most trauma, it doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter, if it's war, if it's rape, or if you got into fender benders in a day. If you have trauma, from the modalities that I've seen that correct the trauma the quickest with the least pain, trauma is a stop of the fight or flight response. Oh
Mm-hmm.
no, it's okay, I'm fine, and we never
Mm-hmm.
finish that fight or flight response. And it sends us into, if you look into polyvagal theory and somatic
Mm-hmm.
experiencing and stuff like that, we haven't finished our trauma response. There's like a great video on the internet of, I think it's polar bear, and he gets tranquilized, guys in the helicopter tranquilizing him to tag him. And harrowing experience, I imagine, for the bear to be chased by a helicopter.
Oh my gosh, I can only
And
imagine.
and he gets tranquilized. He passed out, and they put a tag on him. And when he wakes up, he instantly gets up, shakes off, and continues running.
Right.
And that's why animals don't have PTSD.
Right.
They finish it. You wouldn't exist in the wild if you had PTSD. If you're an antelope and you're
Mhm.
traumatized and you're looking over your shoulder all the time, you're gonna get eaten like that.
Yep.
So I think having that big frontal cortex makes us rationalize and justify and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. Oh, it's not as big a deal as other people have gone through. But I think the segue to you mentioned fasting.
Mhm.
Now, what are you practice any daily spiritual disciplines? Fasting, meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, any of those areas, or
I meditate on a regular basis. I do also fast on a regular basis, despite it doesn't really look like it. But I do. There's when you have that connection, I don't know about you. I imagine you've done fasting. It sounds
every
like.
day.
Yeah, and so, well, if you go like 2 or 3 days of fasting, so let's say water fasting, right? So water fasting, you'll find that your spiritual connectiveness is incredibly clear on starting about the second day. Even the first day, you can start to notice that it starts to ramp up. And I'm going to say you start to hear more things. Things become clearer because I don't know about you, but when I just going about daily life in a normal way or whatever, it's just a lot of noise for me. I don't know if that's the same for other people, but it's a lot of noise. And then if I target a frequency, I can then listen in on that. When I'm fasting, the noise decreases. I don't, and I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's my own bodily inflammation or something, but the noise decreases and you can hear far more things around you or see things or, you know what I mean, downloads, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty awesome. So you can see why, like priests and stuff, priests, priestesses, whatever, they will fast for a day or two before they do a big ceremony or something like that, so that they can make sure their connection is clear in regards to whatever they're doing.
Oh
But
yeah, I've noticed that. The first day I'm hungry. The second day, hunger is just something in the background.
mhm,
And the third day, I decide when to eat. I've done that, a couple of times a year, usually for quite a while, and then my meditation is daily. I do well, I'll do like 20 to 30 minutes of direct meditation where I'm doing nothing,
mhm.
but my meditative practice has gotten to the point now where I'm meditating, while I'm regulating without regulating.
Yes,
So I can be
and I agree
reading a
with that.
book and I'm meditating while I'm reading the book. My absorption of the knowledge comes
Mhm,
very quick. I mean, and I suffered from ADHD and so on and so forth. And then in my addiction, I was drug addict for 30 plus years. And at the end of my addiction, my brain was just so blotto.
mhm,
I could read a paragraph and I wouldn't comprehend it. Ask me, Jack and Jill went up a hill or something. It's that simple, and I would go in one ear and
mhm.
out the other. And now I'm at the point where I can, we got another one here. This is Martha. Martha, don't get on there. Now the comprehension is at the point where I can read a book in a night and teach it the next day.
Nice.
I'll be going through, I'll outline it, and usually it's on the subject matter. Go away now, go away. Usually it's on the subject matter that I'm already working on, so it builds. Like you started mathematics and you went to geometry and algebra and calculus and stuff. It's all building from there, so it gets easier and easier and easier
Mhm,
to build on the principles that you already know. That is to me amazing. Plus, the more I meditate, the more time I have, which is a
mhm.
paradox.
Yes,
And
agreed.
you wouldn't think it. And there's an old, I think it's a Zen saying, or it's a Chinese wisdom. If you're emotionally dysregulated, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, they didn't use that language back then. If you're emotionally dysregulated, meditate for an hour a day. If you don't have time to do that, meditate for 2 hours a day.
Yeah, for another hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard
So
that.
I mean, and that's funny because everyone I know that I tell to do these things, or I suggest to do these, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I don't have the time.
Mhm,
It's like, and then that my new book is, on a program that if you will spend 15 minutes a day on yourself, in meditation, a little journaling, setting your intentions, and having a circle of accountability to keep you on
mhm,
track with it, you'll get better.
mhm.
I could guarantee that you'll be on the top of the mountain, Tibetan monk on the top of the
Yeah.
mountain. But people, you'll notice that you're getting better. You're getting more emotionally regulated. That
Mhm.
monkey brain is slowing down a little
Yes.
bit, and so on. You know,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
I find, this leads to the next question. God, I talk too much for an interview. Sorry.
It's all good.
What kind of creative projects are you working on,
Oh,
and so
kind of cut
on
out
and
here.
so
What's
forth?
going on?
What
I'm
kind
sorry,
of
what'd you say?
creative projects? What's your gratifying behavior on a regular basis? Some mine is cooking for my wife. It's
Mm,
gratifying. I'm doing something for somebody else, and as a side bonus, I get to eat the food. So,
yeah. I actually, because like what I do for a living is I'm a voice actor. So that's actually something that's very, very gratifying for me, that I should have gotten into a longer ago than I did. I've only been doing it for 4.5 years now, but it's something that I'll never turn away from. And so it's something that I'll never give up as far as that's concerned. It's just something that I really enjoy doing. But another thing from the outside, I like to, I enjoy going on walks with my family. Going on walks because, my daughter will just chatter the whole time, while we're walking or whatnot. And just kind of, we walk around, like there's some forested areas right around where I live, and we'll walk through there. And I, I like the connection to both the earth as well as my family, at the same time. And so that's technically not really creative, but
well, it is though. I mean, doing something physical, a lot of times, is a nice way to ground yourself. Going on a walk, doing a little exercise, and so on and so forth. Now, kids, how many kids do you have?
I have two. I have
Nice.
two. Oldest is 8. She'll be 9 next month. And then I have a 6-year-old boy. And so, before they came around, I've lost about 15 children,
Oh boy, I'm sorry.
through major infertility problems. So there's a lot of emotional dysregulation that occurred due to that stuff too. So, but, yeah, with these guys, I don't know. I used to always tell my daughter that it was just her trying to come through the whole time.
Mhm.
It's just my body couldn't take it for some reason. Um, and so because there was obviously no problem with getting pregnant. It was a matter of me holding it,
Mhm.
carrying. And so, but all the doctors were just like, we don't know what's going on. We don't know why you're doing this. And the interesting thing is that I did a parasite cleanse. I did a parasite. I was like, well, I haven't tried this. Let's see what happens. And so tried a parasite cleanse. And I specifically told my husband, I said, I cannot get pregnant while I am doing this because those are abortive.
Mhm.
And so my daughter was conceived right there in the middle of one. And I'm like, really? Really? And she stuck so hard. I mean, I had no problems with the pregnancy at all. None. And so meanwhile, the other ones, I had problems the whole time. So it was crazy.
Well, there's so many things, I mean, that we don't. I mean, look at a list of ingredients on the food we get. I mean, I saw a comparison, between ours and like, UK.
Mhm.
Britain, and like British Doritos were like corn, spice,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
American Doritos had like a million colorings
Mhm.
and so much garbage in there that is being put in. And one of the things that amazes me though is you'll have, especially I work with counseling people on emotional regulation, and particularly with drug addicts and people that have complex PTSD,
Mhm.
because the 30-year approach of 30 years on the sofa,
Oof.
telling
Yeah.
the therapist things for people that are addicted to fentanyl, have gotten back from war and stuff like that. They don't have 10 years to learn emotional regulation, or 5 years, or 2 years. I
Mhm.
need to be able to teach them a discipline and a skill, and I call it triage psychology, that will get them emotionally regulated enough to not put a noose around their
Mhm.
neck, not hit
Mhm.
the liquor store, not go to the drug dealer, and as rapid a time as I possibly can. So, while 30 years on the sofa would be great for a doctor, I imagine they could buy a yacht with that amount of money, or add an addition to their
Mhm.
big beach house or whatnot. These people don't have that kind of time. They're rapidly killing themselves.
And
So
frankly, it's not quite very empathetic either when they
no,
say
it's
that, because
it's
it's like, I
not.
don't think you see the severity of the situation here. Um, there was I was roofied and raped back in 2012.
Oh God, I'm
And
sorry.
I went through, oh, thank you. But I went through some major PTSD from it. And at the time I had still been seeing my therapist. And so she taught me the what you would probably recognize as EFT. EFT, which is
Explain that.
what that is it's like the tapping therapy.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, it's like tapping therapy. And so what you're doing is that when you're tapping, you pick a sensitive pressure point. It can be, because your eyebrows are extremely sensitive, right? So you can do your eyebrows if you want, or you can do like the funny bone, even right here is a
Mhm,
sensitive one. The knees, the tendon right at the knees, where they
mhm.
always do that here, and they
Yep.
clink and take your leg up. The knees I found to be the easiest, because you just sit on the table and you just tap. I use like I'll be tapping like this. And I would go through some nasty, nasty panic attacks. I mean, they threw me in the hospital a couple times,
Mhm.
because I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die. And I was convinced that I was going to die. And so, but like doing the tapping therapy stuff, what it does is it resets the amygdala. It resets the amygdala to be like, oh, I'm not in danger right now, in regards to things. That way, then it takes away the severe piece of what they're feeling at the moment while you're getting that therapy and working on that other stuff, at the same time.
So, I mean, so much of Western medicine is specialized and looks at areas under a microscope, that it's counterproductive. And another thing, I realize now why it's not done, but why wouldn't you look at the anomalies? The
Right.
people that got better, that had
Hmm.
stage 4 cancer and healed, it went into remission.
Right.
I want to know everything they did. If
Hmm.
they stood on their head and spit wooden nickels,
Yeah.
knock on wood, I'm gonna
Hmm.
try anything that they tried because it worked.
Right.
And I've come to the conclusion that these big agencies, whether it's the government, whether it's American Psychological Association, Psychiatric Association, and so on, work for themselves.
Yes,
So
they always do.
they
Hmm.
work for themselves, if as a byproduct they help someone, well, that's
Mhm.
good, but they are working for themselves. The Department of Defense is working for itself. The government is
Mhm.
working for itself. And I think it took me a while to be disabused of the notion that, oh, the government's benevolent, or these things are benevolent. And maybe they're not, benevolent, or maybe they're neuter and so forth. But they work for their own ends. So they're
Mhm.
not very interested in. Planck's principle says you don't get new science until the old scientists are dead,
Right. You're
because
absolutely right. Yeah.
they're
Mhm.
defending their theories. But that tapping makes a lot of sense because it ties into into qigong.
Mhm.
It ties into polyvagal theory and so on
Mhm.
and so forth. With because like the next book is, it's just four simple practices. You can do them in 15 minutes a day. They might lead you to therapy, they might lead you to
Mhm.
support groups, they might lead you to other ways to help yourself, to
Mhm.
strategize on making your life less stressful and more happy.
Mhm.
But it's just okay, let's just boil it down and distill it to the most basic things you can do. Meditate every day.
Mhm.
Right. You don't have to be Shakespeare. Write yourself a
Mhm.
text every day saying, today sucked, I got to work late.
Mhm. Journaling. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
set the tone for the whole day. All right, well, don't hit snooze 3 times anymore.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
watch that stops your day. Have a playlist ready for the car, or audiobook.
Mhm.
Oh my
Mhm.
God, suddenly my day's starting out better. But if it's not written,
Mhm.
you just
Mhm.
won't think of it. You'll just go through the same patterns every
Yep.
single day and the same stress.
Yeah.
What's your idea of like a perfect day? What would you be doing on a perfect self-care day, or whatnot?
Perfect self-care, like 3 months, actually.
There you go.
I would do I would do a meditative retreat. A meditative retreat, ideally in Tibet, but of course we know how where that's gonna go probably because of China.
Mm,
But I've always wanted to go to Tibet and like basically spend time in a cave. In a cave, sit out there and just stare out into nature, listening and watching and just meditating just the whole time. That to me, that sounds awesome. That sounds amazing. I don't care if I'm eating. I don't care. I just need water. But I would spend like 3 months out there. That's something whenever I'm extremely stressed out, like when we moved from Phoenix to Maine and then from here to from Maine to Indiana. And each time we moved, like at some point during the moving process, I'm like, man, I wish I was in Tibet right now. I've never actually been there, but I'm pretty sure a past life was there. So, I'm pretty sure that's where that urge comes from going, I just want to go back to Tibet, that kind of thing. So
now,
that's the,
voice
I hmm,
that. Oh no, that sounds beautiful to me. I actually, my next planned retreat hopefully will be an ayahuasca ceremony.
oh, mhm.
I would like to try that. I found that those natural medicines are incredible for certain people.
Have you
You
done
know,
ayahuasca before?
no, I haven't. I've done microdosing with psilocybin. I've done some heroic doses with psilocybin,
Mhm.
and now it worked. It worked. So I don't
Nice.
even need to. I'm a drug addict, so I was very careful on this because psychoactive substance.
Yeah.
Heroic dose, you'll get very high off of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I didn't try the heroic doses until I had done the microdosing for a while. And then what I wanted to do was monitor my behavior while I was on it. Am I starting to become dishonest? Am I starting to become less creative? Am I
Hmm.
starting to go off my, the things that make me okay,
Yeah.
which is, I find service to others makes me okay, in whatever
Hmm.
way that is. It might be giving somebody some money on the corner, it might be cooking for my wife, might be
Hmm.
picking a piece of trash off the ground, saying some encouraging words to someone who looks like they're having a miserable day or whatever. So my ideas of recovery are not uh you know what the industry is. The industry is cessation completely. Stop doing all drugs and alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
and go to 12 steps, which I'm a big advocate of the 12 steps. Just not so much of the fellowship.
Yeah, I can agree
The
with that.
fellowship
Mm-hmm.
can be very culty,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. I got ostracized for asking questions, and that's how I learn. So, if I didn't deify Bill W,
Right.
I was on the outs with people. It's like, I'm not going to pray. This is a guy. This is a regular guy who,
Yeah.
you know, basically, if you read a lot about his life, who stole the work
Yeah.
from the Oxford group and wrote it up as his own thing, and then lived off it for the rest of his life, and gave 10% of the proceeds to his mistress at the end of
Yeah.
his life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, ad hominem attacks aren't great for debate.
No.
If somebody
Mm-hmm.
has a good idea, but I would look at the ad hominem, I would look at the person's personal life and how they lived if they're trying to get me to do something that they say I should do. And I'm
Right.
glad I did the 12 steps before I investigated
Yeah.
him, because I wouldn't have done it probably. And they helped me immensely. The confessional aspect of it with another human being, the amends to the people that I hurt,
Mm-hmm.
the looking at my emotions and looking at patterns of behavior, and for lack of better term, sin.
Mm-hmm.
As you look at the seven deadlies, and you probably got a good list of things that you might want to avoid, because
Mm-hmm.
usually they make you miserable. They might feel exciting and fun while you're doing them, but if you just have rampant sex with everybody and you just do as many
Mm-hmm.
drugs as it leads to emptiness. I know
Yes.
that because I did
100%.
it, and so on. But you know, I found that the people who recover, who are healing their families, who are leading good lives, who are, what Maslow would call self-actualizers and so forth, or Jung would call individuated, have accepted a quite a good deal of personal responsibility for it.
Yes.
There was
Mm-hmm.
one time when I was like, "Oh, I'm going to find the perfect doctor, the perfect therapist." No, no,
It's
that
never
was
gonna happen.
never it.
Yeah.
So is personal responsibility key to, I can tell you're healed. You can talk about a rape without going into total trauma. You can talk about your
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
childhood and you've forgiven the people because they just didn't know what they didn't know. So,
Mm-hmm.
that to me is healed. You won't be triggered so much or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I challenge people to trigger me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because that
please.
teaches
Yeah.
me. So
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
personal responsibility is, part of your philosophy?
I would say that personal responsibility is probably somewhere between 95 and 98% of everything part of your healing. Um, sure, there's that little small amount of help that you'll get from the outside,
Hmm.
because we don't know what we don't know, right? And so that little bit of help that you get from the outside, hey, try this, or hey, look at this perspective, just see what that does. The key is that I can talk at you all day, but that doesn't mean you're listening. So there's that personal responsibility. If you're not listening, if you aren't actually going to act on it or actually do it, it's never going to happen. Um, One of the biggest things that I always tell people a lot, because shadow work comes up a lot, shadow work, inner child work, whatever you want to call it. It's almost all the same thing. Comes up a lot. I learned how to do this I only learned how to do this probably, let's see, what was it, 2020. And so before that, I was still had a lot of my triggers. I still had a lot of my stuff, except for like certain things that I had managed to do the shadow work on my own without recognizing that I did it,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. But there's still a bunch of other things that I hadn't worked through, particularly in relationship with like my mother or something like that, because my mom and I did not have a good relationship.
Hmm.
She's a diagnosed schizophrenic and I was the target. I was always the problem, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that creates a lot of things that you have to work through as far as self-worth and stuff like that. So I struggled from that a lot. But I had a friend who was a licensed therapist, and he's actually an author. He's an author, and he was telling me, he's like, well, there's a way to get through things. And he says basically what you do is you know, say you have some sort of random trigger that's bothering you, and what you need to do is you need to remember the earliest memory. He says you need to recognize the emotion itself and where it plays in your body, because you can feel it, right?
Yeah.
You can feel it somewhere, be it your knee, your shoulder, your stomach, your neck, whatever. um Focus on that, and where was the very first time that you felt that feeling? You know, and so you have to think all the way back. When was the very first memory that I felt that feeling? And a lot of times it'll go back to your formative years. It'll go back to your formative years. Um, and like, let's say I'm going to use an example, one of my own personal examples here. I had a thing about abandonment.
Mm.
And it was from something very, very simple that a 5-year-old obviously would have problems with. But someone like you and I right now at our age, we'd be like, whatever. But 5 years old, like, you know, because my mom had told me that she was going to take me to the grocery store. We never used to leave the house because, like I said, we were poor. She was going to take me to the grocery store with my sister and everything like that. And I was like, okay, you know, so I run off and I go get my shoes. I'm like 5, and run off to go get my shoes. I grab the shoes and I go back to the garage to, you know, get in the car. And she's already backing down the driveway. And as I'm like, what, like, you know, what's going on? Why aren't you waiting for me? And I'm like, mom, you know, like a 5-year-old would.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember specifically her pointing and going, no, you stay right there. And I was just devastated by that. It devastated me that, one, she lied to me. She didn't want me to come with her. And two, she left me. Now, I was there with my dad, not a big deal. I love my dad. I'm a daddy's girl. So it's not the fact that I was left with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's that she left me behind and I didn't even see it coming. Um, and so it created a lot of issues with relationships in the future. And that was one of the things that I had to do the backup work on. And that was a very,
Mm.
so when I looked back at the memories, what was it? There was something about a friend, something with a friend that had come up or something like that, and they weren't talking to me anymore. Oh, because of the 2020 thing, you know, everything that happened in
Oh
2020
yeah,
that
yeah.
caused a lot of friendship problems, right?
Yeah, it did.
And so my friend that I had had since like 5th grade stopped talking to me. And I was devastated, you know, because I didn't even see this coming. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even see it coming from her. And so I had to do the work on it, right? And so that's one of those wonderful triggers that we're looking for. And it was that memory that it took me back to, where I did not see the abandonment coming, and I took offense to it as if it was my fault. I took too long to get my shoes on, you know, or I took too long to go back to the garage, and it was all my fault. And that was the false belief. There's a
What's
false
wrong
belief.
with me? What's
Yeah,
wrong with me? Yeah.
right. Right, exactly. And it's a false belief
Mm-hmm.
that you have instilled within you during those formative years that you have to undo by coming back in as an adult and understanding it. And I'm going to say, kind of explaining it to that inner child of yours. When you
Yeah.
explain it to the inner child, boy, I don't know about other people, but boy, every time I tag on something and I do fix it, I cry. I don't know about everybody else, but that's how I know I got it, because I never see it again when it comes to that stuff. But I love that process. It's wonderful. And the closest way that I can, like a book that I can recommend, was something called Doing the Work with or the Work with Byron Katie.
Okay.
And the name of the book is actually Loving What Is. And it's all about accepting reality of what actually is, knowing what's not reality in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her book guides you through it. I'm a very literal kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Not I shouldn't say literal. I like things straightforward and to the point. That's what I like. So her book is straightforward and to the point. And she gives a lot of really good examples of how it works out. So that's what I tell people all the time. Read that book. It'll help you go back to your old stuff. That way you can ask yourself, is that actually true? Is it
Mm,
actually true that it's my fault that my mother left down the driveway? No, that's not true. But I could see where a 5-year-old would see that,
yeah.
you know? So you have to, so that's where the compassion for your old self comes in that everybody talks about. The compassion for your old self comes in, and you understand why you had that back then. Even if you like say it's something when that happened when you were 20.
Hmm.
Compassion that that's where you were at then, but also understanding this is where I'm at now.
And then, the funny thing though is when it reacts, when you finally get the insight to it, it's like, duh.
Yeah, you're just like, why didn't I
Duh.
see this before?
That was
Right.
controlling my whole life. That is a seeking mommy's love,
Yes.
and so on. And then once it became apparent, now I can see how it acted on every relationship I ever had from that point
Yes.
on. And it was, I'll point to a story that is in one of Gabor Mate's books,
Mhm.
and he was about
Love that guy.
70 at the time. Yeah, I love him too. Uh, and he had some therapy under he did done the psilocybin, and he was having a session with that, and the therapist quasi became his mom, and
Mhm.
he was like, I'm sorry I was such a burden on you. His mother was raising him in Hungary under the Nazi regime, and obviously very
Mhm.
stressed out. They might be sent to a camp, they might be, they might die, and so on and so
Mhm.
forth. Had nothing to do with him. But
Mhm.
since it happened at such an age, he had felt like he had been burdensome and hard on his mom his entire life. And if anyone looks at that, it goes, no, no, obviously this wasn't about you and whatnot.
Mhm.
But as a child, you don't have agency to take care of yourself. You are at the mercy of whoever is taking care of you, and what they know and how well they can teach you. But it's amazing that that stuff, you have to, I don't dig for those things, but they come
Mhm.
up like you said. My best therapists now are assholes.
Yeah.
Somebody can trigger me. It's like, oh, okay, well, I got something to look at here. Why could they even bother me? Because now it's like, I had a client come back, when I was working in the rehabilitation field, and he noticed I got fatter.
Yeah.
That's a pretty rude thing to
You're like,
say. Yeah, he's
dude.
like, wow, you're fatter than the last time I was here. And I was like, and I just looked at him. I was like, yeah, I know. I get a mirror.
You're like,
Because I don't
thank
lie to
you.
myself anymore. It's like, yeah, I know the mirror told me every day I got out of the shower. I'm not going to dwell on it. I can still tie my shoes and do
Yeah.
what I want. So,
You're healthy in general.
yeah.
Yeah.
But for most of my life, that would have been playing in my mind for
Mhm.
months, years. I would have been going to people who would lie to me and say, no, you look just as good as you ever did,
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff like that. Whereas now it's like, no, I already know the truth about myself. So if you tell me something I am,
Yeah.
I've already accepted that. As long, yeah, I'll
Mhm.
probably cut down on some calories later and stuff like that if
Yeah.
it gets hard to walk up the stairs.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
what's coming up? Anything? I mean, you love your work. You're raising two young children. Any big plans or big to-dos or what have you?
I actually am narrating a book for an author currently. Her name is Renee Dutton, and she wrote a book called The Sunshine Effect. And what it is, let's see, was it how to light up your life with joy and positivity. So I'm narrating a book on that. And the one thing that I found when it comes to voiceover work is that whenever I need to learn more about something, the universe will provide it to me in my voiceovers on
Yeah.
how to learn it, which is fantastic. And so, and because sometimes I'll go through periods of my life where I'm kind of cranky. So kind of cranky, kind of irritable, just like get off my back, kind of one of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know in the last like month or two, I've been kind of a little bit on that edge. And it mostly has to do with the fact that I've been working on uh okay, so I naturally have a drive to do a lot of things. I have Mars in my first house in astrology, and it's conjunct my ascendant, which means I take on a lot because I enjoy doing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is I do too much. And so I do too much and I exhaust myself. And what's happening is that the last few months I've been forced, by my kids being home for the summer and stuff like that because I work from home. Um, Forced to back away from other projects so that I can be with my family, so that I can do my voice work and everything. But unfortunately, nothing else. No tarot or anything like that, which I do enjoy doing. I do enjoy doing tarot because I like to do readings on like uh, investigations on questionable deaths. I like to do that to find out, like, for example, Tupac Shakur, that kind of thing. I love to do readings about things like that. Um, but it, I don't have time for it. And to have enough self-care regarding, being a stay-at-home mom at the same time as working at home and stuff like that. So it's like I had to give that up. Is Even though I love it, I don't love it as much as I love the voice work. So which one am I going to give up? Bye bye tarot. There it goes. So I will do it every so often, when I do have the moment, but not on any sort of schedule by any means. Or I'll do like personal readings and stuff on a regular basis whenever I get them. I do the personal readings. But anything for like, let's say YouTube, that kind of thing, that stuff's back burner all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And having to do that irritates me. It irritates me. And that's that trigger of I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough if I'm not doing enough. And I know that that has to do with a programming thing um, for myself, just because there may be a little bit of the whole don't be lazy kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff coming in. But I'm just like, because I go and I work out in the morning. So I do that. That's a very calming thing for me too, because I do weight lift. And I enjoy putting my body through torture. And so I enjoy doing that because it does get a lot of energy out. Um, People who have Virgo in their first house need to move. They need to move a lot. And so I'm a Virgo rising with Mars in my first house. If I don't move, I get fat. That's end of story. And I spent years not moving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was bad. And I spent a lot of like, mental health issues due to that stuff. But in working out, it really does calm me down with the whole thing. So I'm not about to give that up. Not about to give up the voice work or anything like that. And I'm not about to give up family time
I
for
hate wake.
tarot.
I'll hit snooze while I'm not working right now. While I'm not working on a 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on my books and a lot of other things. But I hit snooze more now because for probably the last 3 years, when I get up, I make my bed, I pray, and then I bang out 90 push-ups.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Credit. I do it every
That's
day, but
good.
but
That's
I'm not
good.
looking forward to doing 90 push-ups every morning, and then I do some Tai Chi later, and usually some isometrics and stuff like that, because my only goal is, I just don't want to get fat.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I
Understood.
I'm
Yeah.
okay. I don't want to have to buy new pants.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, smaller pants or bigger pants, I can move okay the way I am, and stuff like that. And I'm happy with who I am. I found value in myself that doesn't come from the physicality, which was one, I mean, Jung talked about the different phases and archetypes of man, the athlete, the
Hmm.
warrior, the statesman, and finally the spirit, which you don't see many people progressing through these anymore in a
Mm-mm.
lifetime. I know, people that are hitting their 60s that are still in the athlete, which is all
Hmm.
about how they look and how pretty they are, or how
Hmm.
handsome they
Hmm.
are, how their bodies are and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, to be in that rut, must
Yeah.
really suck. Because I never felt it. I had six-pack abs my whole life because I was fat as a kid. And then I
Hmm.
was, and then I was in my teen years, I started working out and I got in shape and stuff like that. But the only time I didn't feel like that fat kid was either when someone was complimenting me, I could see myself in the mirror, or a photo.
Yeah.
The rest of the time I was still that kid that felt
Yeah.
that way. So the change of the body did nothing for the esteem until I found value in myself, however I was. And
Right.
this has been a great interview. I thank you so much for sharing your time with us. The hopes and the goals of this show are to give some people some insights into becoming, it's more than just about recovery from addiction, recovery from stress and mental illness. It's about becoming self-actualized, and I think you are. One little thing, if I can give you a tip, I get cranky sometimes when I'm tired and I can't sleep. And you said you had sleep issues
Hmm.
too. And if I get cranky when I'm trying to sleep, it will go into a downward spiral of every little thing that could
Hmm.
be better in my life. And I'll send you a link to it. But someone shared this meditation with me, and it's, oh God, the Schwarzhoff, I think, is the guy who does it. And it's a little bit of qigong in it, because you put your hands together,
Hmm.
start regulating your breathing, and then imagine your thumbs until the thumbs tingle,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then move on to your next fingers until they tingle. The next fingers, it will shut down the monkey brain, and it will stop it will, because I have a great life. I have a great life, but when I'm
Yeah.
tired and tossing and turning, I will look at, well, my wife doesn't do this, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
instead of
I know
seeing the
exactly what
beautiful
you're talking about.
forest, I am seeing the couple of little inadequate trees that once I sleep
Hmm.
and wake up the next day, I'm not even going to mention to anyone because they're
Yeah.
so minuscule. But
Hmm.
that meditation has been one of the greatest ones to just, if you can do it for 90 seconds, a couple of minutes, it shuts down the emotions, it shuts down
Okay.
that emotion. So I'll send you a link to that and
That's
stuff
a
like
good tip. I
that.
like that.
And it just, you can't think at the same time as you're thinking about your fingers.
Right. Yeah,
It's
you're
like
right.
whatever else is going on, I'm thinking, if I'm thinking about my fingers, and they will tingle
Hmm.
eventually as I think about them, I'm putting awareness into them. And that's, sort of the principle behind Qigong and yoga and so on and so forth, is to move that energy into different areas. If you get really
Hmm.
good at it, you can move that energy anywhere. You can get rid of pain
Oh
and
yeah.
the whole
Hmm.
9 yards. But I'll send that to you. And thank you
That'd be
so
great.
much for being on the show. Hopefully, we'll get enough followers eventually that'll become monetized. And when it does, every cent of that money is going to go towards, eventual opening of my therapeutic community.
Nice.
What I like to do.
That'll be exciting.
So thank
That'll be
you very
exciting.
much,
Well,
Atlantis.
thank you so much for the invitation. I do appreciate it.
Okay. God bless everyone. Have a great day. And I'm going to stop the recording. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the show today. Please, again, hit like and subscribe. All the proceeds will go towards helping those who suffer from mental illness. And your comments help to fuel the show and decide what guests we'll have on and what topics we'll cover. So thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Bye now.